Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Stormworks. We are once again working on our oil rig. We're back. In the last episode, I talked about how we got to start doing our slurry system, so that's what we're going to do today. First, I just wanted to kind of round this tank off. I talked about that a little bit last episode. I don't like how square it is, so we're going to make it a little bit more round, and then later we're going to be moving on to the slurry filters and slurry pumps. But that is pretty much what we got in store for today. So if you guys like this build series, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Come back for more. I've got a build that I've been working on in the background quite a bit that I'm going to probably get released to you guys soon-ish. I talked about that in the last episode too. So if you guys are looking for the more military style builds, we definitely have one of those coming up, so don't worry about that. But yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with the channel. And for now, we're gonna just keep working away on our oil rig and try to get this close to done. This is gonna be a pretty long series, so we got a lot to do. So we're gonna get right into the build on this one. All right, so we've gotten a little bit of building done, and we are moving on over to the slurry system now. So if you guys are unaware, essentially in real life, you need to pump a slurry, or what is generally referred to as mud, into the well hole, and that basically backfills the space that you've drilled as well as pressurizes the system. So it's kind of a rather important part, and in Stormworks it doesn't kind of quite work the same way, but essentially what we're doing here is we are going to be setting up our filters. So these big, huge blocks are our filters, and I thought it would be kind of cool to kind of make them have catwalks and stuff. So you can actually walk right across the bottom of these. So I just added an extra block, and I'm going to put a railing, and then we're going to do a bunch of different staircases and stuff. And I think that'll really help the aesthetics of the oil rig. Now we got to move this this filter setup towards the rear. It's not going to stay here, but I kind of wanted to just build it here until we get it situated. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is we need to pump fresh water into these things. So that's why we needed to do the freshwater tanks first. And it has to be fresh water. It can't be salt water. So we needed the desalinators and all that, which is good because we need it for other things in the oil rig later on. But in the meantime, That's what we kind of needed the fresh water for. So what we're doing right now is I'm just making this kind of look a little bit better, and then we're going to get to the plumbing. So each one of these filters, it has a port for fresh water in, fresh water out, dirty slurry in, and clean slurry out. So we're going to need to make 2 slurry tanks. I'm essentially just going to copy and paste the water tanks that I have over there, change the color of them, and that'll be all set. The kind of weird thing about these slurry filters is you don't need to pull the fresh or the water out. I guess it really wouldn't be fresh water anymore, but you don't need to pull the fresh water out. So if you guys are kind of building along or building your own oil rig or whatnot, just kind of keep that in mind. You don't need to have a return line for the water on these, which is again a little strange, but that's essentially going to be one of the first steps in processing that we have to do on the oil rig. Now, later we're going to get into the oil refining so we can turn it into jet fuel and diesel. And I'll talk a lot about that more in depth when we do it. But for the meantime, this is going to be what I would imagine is one of the first steps in processing the fluids. So this is a rather important part of the ship, and it's rather large. But what's cool about it is, again, you can kind of walk across these platforms, and I think that it will add a lot of kind of verticality to the build. So if you ever look at oil rigs, they're very tall. And I don't mean they just kind of sit high in the water. I mean, the structure itself is a lot of layers built on top of it. We don't really have that luxury just because I'm trying to fit this in the build space. So what I'm going to essentially try to do as I build this thing is I'm going to try to make it look very tall from the outside, and then really it's just going to be one floor on the inside. So that's going to really help us a lot with this. And again, I think that it would be kind of cool to be able to walk up and down around these with the catwalks and stuff, just because they do have space to walk. And then that way you can also kind of go check on the levels and check on the fluids and all that kind of stuff too. So again, that's what we're working on right now. The catwalk is a little kind of complex. The floors aren't all even, so I'm doing my best to kind of make it look all even and stuff. But for the most part, it's just kind of stairs and railings. It's nothing too complicated. And in the testing that I did, I found that the 4 filters was going to be enough. So we can, from what I've seen so far, I can run the oil rig pretty much continuously and not really run out of mud. So we're going to have the same, I said earlier, we're going to copy the water tanks, and we're going to have 2 of them. So one for dirty slurry and one for clean slurry. And I'm actually going to spawn it with both of them filled, so you have a little bit to clean. But that is enough to kind of keep the oil rig running indefinitely. I haven't had any blockages due to the slurry. This part isn't very hard per se. It's just kind of space consuming, if that makes sense. You guys can see these filter blocks are very big, so it's just kind of something that I wanted to get done earlier on because we'll need it to test the drilling, but also it's probably one of the larger aspects of the oil rig, so I wanted to get it done and get it in place so we know where we can put all the other stuff. And you know, the oil refining is also going to be rather space consuming, so that's kind of something we got to worry about also. For the meantime, I'm not going to really worry about the oil refining. We're just going to pump it into a tank, and then I'll kind of talk about that a little bit down the road. But this is going to get pushed back all the way to the edge of the oil rig, so this will almost be like a wall that you can kind of keeps you from falling over. But it's also going to kind of change the weight balance, and that's something, I talked about in the last episode. That's something we really got to work around, and I'll explain a lot of that in later episodes to you guys, but for the most part, I think that this is one of the cooler looking aspects of the build, and it's not really that complicated. What's nice is we're going to actually run a lot of pipes around this area. It'll help us a lot later down the road for pipe management. I end up putting the refinery right next to this thing, so we're going to have a lot of pipes going in and out of this kind of area, and you guys will see. We'll move it in a couple seconds here, but that is essentially the gist of what we're going to get done today. And in the later half of the episode, we're going to get those other tanks put in, and then we will start kind of doing the plumbing and all that good stuff. All right, so we got this thing in its final place. And I'm just going to go back here and kind of pretty it up a little bit. They have these weird kind of slopes on the backside, so I'm just trying to make that a little bit better. Now, keep in mind that we are going to have a ton of pipes over around this area, so I am trying to not get too crazy about what it looks like right now because we're probably going to have to move some stuff. But for the most part, this is exactly where it goes. You can see the lower catwalk walk straight up into the slurry filter area, and I'll have a couple different entrances to this too, so you don't have to just go up the filter or up here and then around and down. I'll make it so you can go from the lower catwalk up onto the top deck without having to kind of do some sort of weird path. I keep talking about trying to save space. We do need to save space, but at the same time, we have a lot to work with, so we can kind of play around with things and make it how we want. Now that we have this in the final spot, I can talk a little bit more about the refining tower. So the refining tower is going to sit to the left of this, kind of in between the filters and the water tank. And then we're going to have a bank of furnaces. So you need a lot of furnaces to heat the oil. And so we're going to have to worry about that too. But this is where it's going to sit. I think it looks good back here. It adds a lot of verticality to the build, which is kind of what we were trying to do earlier. And these catwalks are kind of cool to walk across. They're nothing too special. There's no real reason to have them, but it's cool. It's a nice little feature in my mind, and it kind of gives you a good vantage point over the water. So the other thing that we've got to cram back there is a exhaust system. So we're going to have a tower that kind of carries the furnace's exhaust and the generator's exhaust away from the ship. And that is also going to get crammed back there. So when I said we have a lot of pipes to handle, we've got a lot of stuff that we've got to cram back there. But right now we're going to move on into getting the water and the mud ran. So I copy and pasted the tanks off camera, and you guys won't really see that, but they're exactly the same tanks as the water tank. So exactly the same size. Nothing fancy. They're not quite as big. I think they carry each 17,000 liters of slurry, which should be more than enough. But right now we're going to work on getting the water pumped over to them, and then we will worry about getting the slurry pumped over to them too. All right, so we are kind of just placing these pipes randomly right now. Bear in mind with me, guys, these are definitely going to change. I will definitely route them so they look a lot nicer. So that is kind of the gist of what we've got to do. You can see the darker red tank there is going to be our dirty slurry, so it's got to go into the top of the filters, and then this cleaner brown is going to be our clean slurry. And since that comes out of the bottom of the filters, I'm going to run that on the bottom of our oil rig, so that's going to come out the floor down here and then get routed back into the light tan tank. But again, we're going to be kind of playing around with these pipes quite a lot. You guys will see these will change quite a bit. I just wanted to get them hooked up for the most part right now. So they won't necessarily change too much. They're going to be generally routed in the same direction that you see them right now. But as we build more and more, we're going to have to kind of support them, and I don't like the look of, just floating pipes and stuff. So we're going to have to add supports and that kind of stuff to them. But they're also going to go past a ton of other tanks and that kind of stuff. So it'll be easier to kind of sort them out a little bit later down the road. For the meantime, we're just getting them hooked up. And, I'm doing my best to still make them look good. So a little bit of advice I can give for that is, I personally, I love the plumbing in Stormworks. I spend way too much time doing it. But what I can kind of give as advice to try to clean your pipes up is try to run a lot of pipes together, and try not to just make random corners. Try to make as few bends as possible, essentially. So think about this from a real life plumbing standpoint. Every time you add a 90, you're going to need more pumping pressure, because it's going to kind of create a block, so to speak, for the fluid to go around. So generally for piping, what I try to do is I try to line it up together, and I try to run a lot of pipes in parallel and space them evenly. So you can see we have this corner right here, and I'm going to space them evenly around this corner. So I think it's about 7 blocks that we go around. And that way it doesn't really, you don't need to do this, but it makes it look a little bit nicer and more organized. It's easier to follow too. So something else that I do with a lot of my creations, which is completely unnecessary, is I go in and I put a lot of flow meters and valves and that kind of stuff. You don't need to do that. I think it looks a little bit better. Generally speaking, you're not going to just have bare pipes everywhere. And I wish so much that I could use some of the pipe mods that are on the workshop right now. They would make this thing look so good. But if I use any of the mods, I can't really share it. And that's kind of not really the point of why I'm building these. So that's just a little bit of food for thought. I wish they would change that about the game. I know it's kind of complex to do. But yeah, so we got both of these lines ran, and now we've got to add some pumps. The only other thing that we're going to have to do, which is going to be a lot easier to do with the slurry, is we're going to have to add pumps that go into the tower, but we haven't really worked on the tower yet, and we haven't really built it. So that's nothing that we're going to worry about now. That'll kind of come at a later episode. But for the most part, I think the pipes around the filters themselves are going to stay about where they are, and then we'll kind of worry about following them and supporting them and making sure they all kind of look nicer once we get a little bit more building done. The slurry pipes that are on the top, so those brown pipes, they're actually going to be routed around quite a few tanks. So I'm going to move them over right now, and they're going to have to get moved again later. But right here where I kind of just moved these pipes across, that's going to be like our main liquid storage. So that is where we are going to get our refined diesel and jet fuel sent to. And so we've got these really, really big tanks, but the nice thing about that is we're going to build this big kind of catwalk around them that you can kind of go up and walk around. But on that catwalk alone, we're going to have slurry, we're going to have jet fuel, we're going to have diesel, we're going to have oil, and I don't think there's any water, but I do believe there might be some exhaust. So I could be wrong about that. But right now we're just going to get our pumps in, and then we will kind of close out the episode. We're getting close to the end. I know this episode's been a little bit longer, so if you're still here, thank you for bearing with me. I know it's kind of been a lot of just yapping about pumps and filters and that kind of stuff, but this is a pretty important part of the oil rig. So I would advise that you generally get this done sooner than later, just because, again, it's pretty space consuming. You can see those filters are huge, and then we also have to have 2 pretty large tanks for it too. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all we got for this one today. So again, If you're still here, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like button if you like this series. Like I said earlier in the episode, there's definitely going to be some more military builds coming out. So I know a lot of you want me to put weapons on this. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry, guys, but we'll get to that. Just give me a little bit of time. I'm trying to get ahead on some builds so we can start showing them off on the channel. But yeah, that's all we got for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.